Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today on Thursday, the 13th of July. And well, let's just say it's been an interesting 12 hours or so. That's right. A lot of you people joining me. I'm so happy to have you all here. I see we got Fanto5692, Charlie in the chat, and Sean Stackhouse, to name a few. I hope you're all are doing well today. I am, of course, the script doctor here to give you some insight with regards to story, structure, character, plotting, and a little bit of a unique perspective on the general industry news. For those that may not be aware, but it looks like you are because of the thumbnail, obviously, that is correct. SAG-AFTRA has agreed to strike after a failure to come to a deal with the AMPTP for their new minimum basic agreement contract. And they will be joining the picket line with the writers within the next 72 hours, is my understanding. So, yeah, what does this mean right now? This means that in the first time in, I think, a little over 40 years, maybe even more than that, both guilds, writing and acting, are on strike. So what we're going to do is, and if you just started from the very beginning of the show, then you probably saw, because again, I'm not 100% great at this, but I'm very happy to have you all here to help me get better at doing this stuff here. So we're going to take a look at this Deadline article. So bear with me for a second as I get that set up. Here we are. And we're going to go through what this report says, and I'm going to pose some questions to you all just to get your take on it, and explore the idea of what is unreasonable when it comes to negotiating your value within any job. So that's something I want to discuss and explore. But for now, let's take a look at what Deadline reported pretty early at 1:07 a.m. this morning, Eastern Standard Time for me. I believe it should be that point because that's where I am. And it says, SAG-AFTRA contract talks fail to reach new deal. National board meeting Thursday morning to launch strike side issues statements. And this is by David Robb and Dominique Patton. And there we got those are the plaques that have been printed up that we'll probably be seeing next to my fellow writers out on the picket line. We even have an update with this statement. So we'll read that first. Updated with the AMPTP statement at 1:07 a.m. Contract negotiations between SAG-AFTRA and the AMPTP broke off tonight, and the Guild's National Board will meet Thursday morning to formally approve the launch of a strike. It will be the first actors' strike since the film and television industry, since 1980, and the first time that actors and writers have been on strike at the same time. Okay, so there we go. Since 1960, when Ronald Reagan, the Gipper, was president of the Screen Actors Guild. That's right. For those of you that are fans of Ronald Reagan, he was a Hollywood guild president and union president. So think about that in our history of that leader of the time. It's a quite fascinating story of his. Picketing is set to begin Friday morning. So we are looking at, 63 years since both guilds have been on strike against the studios. That is quite a time. So let's go on. So here's the full statement from SAG-AFTRA. So SAG-AFTRA's television theatrical streaming contracts have expired without a successor agreement. After more than 4 weeks of bargaining, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, the entity that represents major studios and streamers including Amazon, Apple, Disney, NBC Universal, Netflix, Paramount, Sony, and Warner Brothers Discovery, remains unwilling to offer a fair deal on the key issues that are essential to SAG-AFTRA members. Now, for those of you that are unaware, Netflix, Apple, and Amazon are the newest appointees as part of the AMPTP. They were not involved in the previous ones, to my knowledge. I know Amazon and Apple definitely weren't. Netflix might have been, but during the previous negotiations, at least these two guys were not part of them. So what we end up having is we have a few more players in the AMPTP doing the controlled negotiations with the talent that make them money. So that's something to take into consideration. Perhaps they are some of the naysayers. I don't know. I've reached out to some of the people that have connections with the union captains. I have yet to hear anything back from them, but if I do and I can verify that it is valid, I will be happy to share that with you all, either on a stream or on Twitter. Moving on, in the face of the AMPTP's intransience and delayed tactics, SAG-AFTRA's negotiating committee voted unanimously to recommend to the National Board a strike of the producers' SAG-AFTRA TV theatrical streaming contracts, which expired July 12th on 2023 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. SAG-AFTRA's National Board will vote Thursday morning on whether to strike. So yes, this is so the union members have agreed, 98% of them agreed that they will do a strike, and now the board just has to confirm that. So we'll find out later today. SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher said SAG-AFTRA negotiated in good faith and was eager to reach a deal that sufficiently addressed performers' needs. But the AMPT's response to the union's most important proposal have been insulting and disrespectful of our massive contributions to this industry. The companies have refused to meaningfully engage on some topics, and on others completely stonewalled us. Until they do negotiations in good faith, we cannot begin to reach a deal. We have no choice but to move forward in unity and on behalf of our membership with a strike recommendation to our national board. The board will discuss the issue this morning and will make its decision. Now, this I found a little bit quite interesting because a little bit before the extension of the negotiations, Fran Drescher and Duncan Crabtree Ireland put out a video saying that it looked like negotiations were going well. So now I don't know what to make of them at this point. Personally, I'm not okay. So personally, my opinion on Duncan Crabtree Ireland as a negotiator is not very high. I've never met him, but I have seen some of the ways that he does tactics, and I've heard through very close friends of mine that have observed how he negotiates that that I'd say his negotiation is something to be desired. However, he is the one appointed for the union, and I always support my colleagues, even if they're not in my specific field. So I really do hope that they are able to come to some sort of agreement, and that for my fellow actors joining the picket line, I extend a bittersweet welcome. I wish you guys didn't have to join us in this part. I wish you guys got a deal that satisfied your value, and I'm sorry they have to be with us in this endeavor, but I also appreciate your support as well. Hopefully together we can get this resolved so that we all can get back to work, and hopefully take this opportunity to realign the perspectives from ourselves to that of our audience and deliver them some very meaningful and entertaining stories. I'll continue a little bit on this. Now, guys in the chat, I am doing this on my own, so I do apologize. I will try to get to you and your comments as quickly as possible. And I'll even try, I've tried to star these so that I don't lose them as well. But again, I am still new to this part on StreamYard, so I do appreciate your patience with me on that. Going on to see what Mr. Crabtree Ireland has to say. The studios and streamers have implemented massive unilateral changes in our industry's business model, while at the same time insisting on keeping our contracts frozen in amber. That's interesting. You cured in amber is more like, okay, regardless, don't editorialize. That's not how you treat a valued, respected partner and essential contributor. Their refusal to meaningfully engage with our key proposals and the fundamental disrespect shown to our members is what has brought us to this point. The studios and streamers have underestimated our members' resolve as they are about to fully discover. The union will hold a press conference today, Thursday, July 13th at 12 noon PT at SAG-AFTRA Plaza in Los Angeles, following the conclusion of the national board. So that's just in 2.5 hours. The AMPTP will issue the statement shortly after 1 a.m. Pacific time. We are deeply disappointed that SAG-AFTRA has decided to walk away from negotiations. This is the union's choice, not ours. In doing so, it has dismissed our offer of historic pay and residual increases, substantially higher caps on pension and health contributions, audition protections, shortened series option periods, a groundbreaking AI proposal that protects actors' digital likenesses, and more. Rather than continuing to negotiate, SAG-AFTRA has put us on a course that will deepen the financial hardship for thousands who depend on the industry for their livelihoods. Now, I am not sure how authentic this statement is, because unlike with the WGA that was able to put out a sort of spreadsheet of their requests and the responses that AMPTP provided, I don't have access to that on the actor side of things. And as I started digging into it, I haven't been able to find anything similar to that regard. So I do not know how high of a historic pay increase and residuals were offered by the AMPTP. And I also don't know what they mean by groundbreaking AI proposals that protect actors' digital likeness at all. So that those look like very ambiguous, generalized grouping of points. I would have been more impressed if they said, "Hey, they wanted, a 6.42% increase over 3 years, and we offered them a 5, 3.5, and 1.5, or something of that nature." I don't know, but they did, because we didn't get those types of numbers. We can't authentically pick a side or anything of that nature. We don't know who is actually the ones that's being frustrated. But given the fact that we saw the counters and also lack of counters for the WGA, for now, I think it's reasonable to believe that the writers and SAG are actually the ones that are not wanting this outcome to be the case. That they're probably more on a valid side of an argument than the AMPTP. Excuse me. So what we've got here is the update. So the Writers Guild strike, meanwhile, is now entering its 73rd day with no end in sight. We'll get to a little bit of that momentarily. Many striking writers, however, have been rooting for SAG-AFTRA to go on strike alongside them in a show of union solidarity that will force the studios to return to the bargaining table and recognize their demands for a bigger share of the profits their work creates. The Guild's contract had originally been set to expire on June 30th, but was extended until July 12th to allow bargaining to continue. The strike will shut down films and scripted TV shows that employ SAG-AFTRA members, not just in the United States, but around the world. Soap operas, which fall under a separate contract, are exempt. Video games, guys, again, if you are a guild member and the video game company is owned by one of the struck companies and it is part of the contract in question, that will be on hold. However, it shouldn't really matter too much for you guys in the video game community, because all of that stuff is done years before the actual release of the game. So you're still waiting regardless. So I don't think you should be too concerned in that area. And this also affects people who do animation. There are some voice actors that are part of SAG. There's also an animation guild that covers, I think, voice actors as well. But if I'm mistaken there, please correct me. I don't have the luxury of having dealt with animation too much. My skill set that I'm constantly hired for do not require to come in and rewrite animation after it's been animated. So I'm don't get to do any of that stuff here. So under the Guild's Global Rule 1, no member shall render any service or make an agreement to perform services for any employer who has not executed a basic minimum agreement with the union, which is in full force and effect if any jurisdiction in which there is a SAG-AFTRA national collective bargaining agreement in that place. The provisions apply worldwide. On Tuesday, SAG-AFTRA agreed to the company's proposal to bring in a federal mediator in a last-ditch effort to avert a walkout, but prospects for a deal dimmed when the Guild issued a harshly worded statement saying that it was not confident that the employers have any intention of bargaining towards an agreement. blindsided by the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers' 11th hour proposal for federal mediation and insisting that it would not agree to another contract extension, the Guild said the AMPTP has abused our trust and damaged the respect we have for them in the process. We will not be manipulated by this cynical ploy to engineer an extension when the companies have had more than enough time to make a fair deal. I have to concur with that. I think between 4 and 6 weeks is a great amount of time to make a deal, especially if you're doing 8 to 12-hour days with, say, a breakfast, lunch, and maybe a dinner break as well. You should be able to create some sort of progress in that. I think that's reasonable. 1 moment, please. Sorry, had to sneeze. On June 5th, the Guild members voted 98% in favor of authorizing a strike. If a fair deal couldn't be reached, the decision to strike comes nearly 3 weeks after members of the Directors Guild overwhelmingly ratified their own new contract, and against the backdrop of a grassroots campaign that urged SAG-AFTRA to stand strong at the bargaining table and join the WGA on the picket lines if a major realignment in our industry can't be achieved. More than 1,700 actors, including many prominent SAG-AFTRA members, recently signed a letter to the Guild leaders saying that they would rather go on strike and join the WGA on the picket line than compromise on key issues. That letter, which SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher also signed, said, "This is an unprecedented inflection point in our industry, and what might be considered a good deal in any other year is simply not enough. We feel that our wages, our craft, our creative freedom, the power of our union have all been undermined in the last decade. We need to reverse those trajectories." So this statement kind of supports in one of the axioms that our good friend Robert Meyer Burnett has said, which is, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And with regards to SAG and the WGA, that is what they're doing. We are trying to negotiate something that we feel better represents the value of our content. Now, I know there's many of you out there who have been looking at some of the bigger projects, the bigger television shows, the ones that are heavily advertised, and saying, well, these are garbage. We want them to stop and go on strike and let them rot and whatever. Totally understand that part. But as I mentioned the last time I went live, there was around 599 brand new original shows that debuted last year. And statistically speaking, not all of them would be falling under the same issues that you have with your beloved IPs. And there's always a chance that there's a number of them that are brand new, original, don't preach any of the negativity and the identity stuff that we've seen before, and are probably not really being found or available because they're lost in the oversaturation of the competitive advertising. So we really want to make sure that we understand that broad strokes over the guilds is not always going to be a fair assessment with regards to the craft and the execution of what's going on. So keep that in mind. I mean, ideally, something like this could allow for a purge of the lackluster talent supporting those perspectives. But here's also something to consider. These studios choose the people that they want to write their shows, their movies, and they give them mandates of what they want as content in those scripts. It's not the writers coming up to them, pitching them the idea, we're going to do this gender swapped, race swapped, anti-patriarchal, pro-matriarchal, blah, 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 whatever thing to them. The writers aren't doing that. The studios are asking the writers to do that. And the writers who want to be working are doing that. Now, the good writers could make that work and make it be very subtle, and you'd never know those things are in there, but they're also very expensive. And they're also dealing with studio executives who probably don't understand how to write stories well, and when they would see some of those results in the screenwriting phase, probably would be like, well, where is the thing that I want here? Where is, the anti-evil man aspect of it? They're not able to pick up on nuance or subtext. And as a result, the good writer that achieves the goals that the studio wanted in a subtler manner is discarded, and they get someone who is a bit more hungry, a bit more green, and a bit more on the nose to do the very thing that the studio wants, because it comes down to delimiting the problem. Is the problem really the writers? I would say in some regard, there are some out there, but again, who's hiring them? Follow the money, as the phrase goes. Where does the money come from? Who's hiring them? So if the studios are hiring them, and if they're hiring them because maybe some of their investors or their board members are saying this is the direction we want to go, there's that aspect. The other part too is you have readers fresh out of college, business students, business graduates and whatnot, who screen original scripts. So this is not the assignment stuff going on here. This is your original spec script. So many screenwriters like to create a catalog of work to showcase their talents. They'll write original pilots, original feature films. They'll send them out to studios, hoping that they'll want to do something that's not dependent on an existing IP, and that's how you get your creative original films. And in order for them to be made, they have to go through a screening process, and a screening process involves a reader. So a reader who's usually around 20 to 23 years of age sits in an office, reads your script, they write coverage, and they determine whether this should go to their boss or not. And if they have a certain ideology and the script that you've submitted doesn't have that, well, your script goes in the waste bin, and the one that does have that ideology goes up. And if their bosses are getting all of these scripts that have this ideology, what you end up getting is a skewed form of data harvesting. So if you say your legendary producer like Robert Evans is getting all these scripts that come in about, strong, powerful female characters with no real depth or anything, and they're kicking ass all the time, he's going to be like, well, why are we getting all these scripts? And he's going to ask his team, and they're going to be saying, well, these are the ones that are getting past our readers, that our readers find are really good. And he's going to take that data and think, okay, well, if these are the ones that are really good and they're getting past the readers, and because we're judging them based on, the parameters we've set forth with quality, can this make money? Does this have good taste? Blah, blah, blah. Then they're going to assume that all the writers in the industry, or a vast majority of them, are writing this thing, that this is the narrative that the writers have picked up on when they are looking throughout society of where the world is going. And in reality, what we end up having is we have a group of people at the bottom manipulating the data to the top. Then you also have investors outside who maybe have their own agenda, who are basically reinforcing that data, saying this is what we want to do. And so you have the middlemen of the studios. They're either part of that agenda to enforce it, or they're completely hoodwinked by this data. And that is the direction with which they decide to take the studios. And so in order for them to fulfill that, they not only grab the specs that are doing those, that have those perspectives, they're also taking the IPs that they have and taking those perspectives and saying, okay, we want to apply these perspectives to the IPs that we have. This is what we're going to put out for an assignment. And we then we just take pitches for people who want to do it. So you get people like Joss Whedon, you get people like Kiva Goldsman or Alex Kurtzman or whatever, who understand these types of things, give them a pitch, use their name, get the job, and then put it out there. And we as the audience are blindsided by these stories because they don't fit the thing that got us into our entertainment in the first place. They don't follow the social narrative that we enjoy every day. And when we push back on that, it's basically the studios are going, well, why the heck are they pushing back on that? All the data that we gathered says that this should be a good thing, and now they're confused. So they're saying, okay, well, if you guys are pushing back on this, and this is the data we have, either these people are just a loud minority shouting at us, or we're wrong. And guess what? A studio does not like to admit that they're wrong at all. So that's the mentality you have to think about. It's a very, very crazy world. And it's not as simple as you think it is. It's not as simple as saying, okay, the problem is the writers. They contribute to it, but they're not the source. The source really comes down to the fact that for some strange reason, modern day studio execs distance themselves so much from the bottom line of things, the people at the front lines of the industry, and just willing to take them at their word as opposed to doing the work themselves as they kind of used to. I mean, if you were to go to Dino De Laurentiis's offices back in the day and send him the script for Indiana Jones, because for whatever reason they wanted to leave Paramount and they wanted to go with Warner Brothers. If he read that, I think he would have tossed it out and says, "I don't understand what this story is. This movie should be fun. Indiana Jones is fun. Why are you bringing it to us for this? He's old man, depressed, blah, blah, blah." I don't think he would buy into it. I think at that point, he'd be asking the valid questions that used to be asked 20, 25 years ago. And that was basically, I don't want to sell a movie to people where they're going to leave being depressed. Like, it's the entertainment industry, keyword on entertainment. That's kind of where it is. And the entertainment aspect is usually at the forefront. The messaging, the themes, those are the byproduct of the journey at hand of the characters. They are the things that result in us as ourselves asking, okay, well, what I really like this story. I want to go back into this world. I want to see it again. I want to pick up things that I might have missed. There's an attraction there, and that attraction doesn't come from a preachy method. I mean, I'm even going to say right now, this stream that I'm doing to you, I'm kind of preaching a little bit. Let's not ignore that fact. I'm just pointing out, my perspective, my opinions on this stuff, and I'm also trying to cut through the shroud of the easy answers, the Band-Aid solutions that are being presented by so many other people, not just on YouTube, but you see it on all forms of social media. You even see it on some radio shows, and I've seen a couple things on some local TV programs as well, where they just want to point fingers at anyone that has the credit associated with them, as opposed to maybe asking, okay, well, why now is it that the writer's fault when the writers, the actors, the directors built this industry? And that's a question to explore, and I don't know if I have an answer for that yet. I don't, but I'm looking to ask questions and hopefully get information to come to a conclusion for that, because I don't think it's going to be very easy, and I think there's more levels to break down and further examine to figure out how this came to pass. So let's go on here. So we do have a little bit of a controversy with Miss Fran Drescher, because she does a lot of things. And recently, Drescher, who chairs the Guild's negotiating committee, was roundly criticized earlier this week after Deadline was first to report that she had jetted off to Italy during the last week of negotiations, where she was photographed with Kim Kardashian at Dolce & Gabbana's Ultima Moda fashion show. Drescher returned to Los Angeles in time for the last 2 days of bargaining. Now, before I get into a bit of this, I had a couple of actor friends point this out to me. Excuse me, I need a little drink. And they thought it was not the best method. And I completely understood their perspective. What I later learned is that she had commitments to this, to going there already. That was made long before the negotiations were in process. And it was expected that they would have reached a deal at this time and then, not interfere with the plans. So what ended up happening is that Fran Drescher did fulfill her obligations to her contract with Kim Kardashian, Dolce & Gabbana, and all that stuff. But she was also, remotely video calling in to perform this in these negotiations while she was away. So, I mean, listen, it's a rock and a hard place. I don't really want to take 100% of the sides. I think it would have been interesting if, say, I think it would have actually said more to Kim Kardashian and Dolce & Gabbana if they said, you know what, Fran, we understand your obligations here. You don't have to show up. Go do what you can for your actors and whatnot. We'll be fine. I wonder if that conversation took place. I doubt it would. But if it did and Fran did this, then that's a problem. If it didn't and Fran felt like she had to do this, those are, again, two different perspectives. I don't like to jump to too many conclusions unless I have more information. But yeah, I think there should be something. I think more investigation should be required on that before jumping to the end. But again, if some more information does come out and it says, "Oh my God, yes, she did this for selfish reasons," then that's something that she's going to have to live with. So SAG-AFTRA has their explanation that excuse me, sorry, that Drescher was working as a brand ambassador for Dolce & Gabbana on location in Italy. This was a commitment fully known to the negotiating committee. She has been in negotiations every day, either in person or via video conference. There we go. President Drescher is managing a physically demanding schedule across 3 time zones, overseeing negotiations and working on location daily, as well as managing her parents' needs in Florida. She is returning to the States and will be on the ground in LA tomorrow and will continue to chair our negotiations. So that's her official statement there. And I see nothing unreasonable with that if those things are in fact the truth. And let's just take her word for it for now until other information is revealed to counter that. Prior to the start of contract talks on June 7th, SAG-AFTRA laid out some of its key bargaining issues, which include economic fairness, residuals, regulating the use of artificial intelligence, and alleviating the burdens of the industry-wide shift to self-taping. With respect to economic fairness, the Guild has said that outdated contract terms, coupled with the evolution of the media business, including shorter season orders and longer hiatuses between seasons, makes it increasingly difficult for our members to achieve and maintain a middle-class lifestyle working as a performer. In sharp contrast to the diminishing compensation paid to our members, the studios are posting immense profits with a bullish outlook, as demonstrated by lavish corporate executive compensation. I think compensation is a charitable word. It's really just disposable income, because compensation means that something was lost and that this is brought in to compensate for that loss. I don't know if any studio executives, given their regular pay, could ever argue that they lost money on that personally for themselves. Now, losing money for a studio, very different argument. And I don't think if money's being lost for a studio, the people that are the reason behind those losses should get executive compensation. But that is just me. SAG-AFTRA is committed to ensuring our members are able to make a living performing in scripted dramatic live action entertainment. This means ensuring increased compensation when our members work, shoring up the funding of our health, retirement, and pension plans, and providing our members a meaningful share of the economic value created by their performances. So this statement here, I pose a question to you guys in the chat. Is that unreasonable? Again, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And if they are coming at it from the perspective that, okay, given the economic climate, especially in the state of California, middle class is in order to live like a middle class life in California, you should be having a home income of around $150,000 to $200,000 minimum, because of how high the taxes are, how expensive things are out there. The fact that if you're a performer, you don't always work in California. You are often having to fly out. Now, proper productions and good negotiations, they pay for those parts, but some actors don't always get that, and they have to pay out of pocket to fly to wherever location they are. Some even relocating to a temporary home that they have to rent from their own pocket to do the performing, whether it's in Canada, Atlanta, UK, wherever. Again, if it's not negotiated to their benefit, where they're only making money and they're not expensing that out right away as a result, then that needs to be addressed. So yeah, and here's the other part too. Not every actor is taking home millions of dollars per episode or per feature film. There are SAG minimums. In some parts, the minimum daily rate is only maybe a few $100s, or I think it's more than that now. Again, it's been 3 years since I've actually had to look at a contract for an actor, so I apologize if I'm out of date. But I think even in some cases, the day rate could be between $400 and $500 for an actor, especially one that's not a huge star, as it were. So you have to also remember there are thousands of actors in Hollywood. Many of them have part-time jobs in the service or retail industry. in between their gigs. And again, one of the issues with regards to shorter seasons means that there's larger gaps in between work. So if you get a television show today, that could be a 6 or 8 episode show. And that's shot in maybe around 16 weeks, give or take. And then that's it. You have 16 weeks of work, and then you have the rest 30 odd weeks left of the year to find another job. And what you get in those 16 weeks might not cover the expenses of living in California, where you have to be to go to meetings, go to auditions, send in self-tapes, all that stuff. Same with, gas alone is crazy. And not every actor can afford a Tesla. And even then, when you're charging it, you're still paying for the electricity for that as well. So it's a whole nightmare of expenses that have to be done. And that is why when it comes to acting, why the big actors get those 5, 6, 10, $20 million paydays, it's not just because they're valuable enough to bring in the box office. It's also based on the fact that maybe they might not get another job for a couple of years afterwards, and they have to manage that money. And a lot of actors that get those paydays have their own personal production company that hires people to help find them more work. So you have to pay those people. And those are more like a 9-to-5 job in the industry. That's where you're reading scripts, you're going to meetings, you're helping arrange for financing. Who knows what it is you're doing? It's really quite hectic and crazy. And it's not a single actor taking home a $20 million paycheck and it's 100% in the bank after taxes and just rolling into it, like they're swimming in, like Scrooge McDuck in his pool of gold coins. It's not awfully like that. It's a lot of talent in LA, especially directors, writers, actors, are their own business as well. And that comes with employees to help manage it and help them find more work. So, yeah. And then of course, if your LLC is set up in California, you've got state tax, you got federal tax, you've got all sorts of things going on that just takes more and more of that away. And not everyone has brilliant accountants that can circumvent those things. So it's not, they're not living the lavish lifestyle as you think. And one thing that I was very surprised about when I started heading out there and meeting these people is that I've gone to meetings with some pretty notable people who showed up in sweatpants with like cigarette burn holes in them and like a shoddy t-shirt because they just didn't want to doll up. And that's just kind of the thing. Like, they are very human. They have their own idiosyncrasies. And as much as we love their performances and stuff, we should not try to make those, not try and put those performances onto them as who they really are. Because again, they're actors. They're trying to be somebody else. And if they're very good at it, they are rewarded. And if they're very bad at it, we are entertained for all sorts of different reasons as a result. So moving on. As for residuals, the Guild said, while new business models mean that more and more SAG-AFTRA content is monetized around the globe, residual payments are failing to reflect the economic value of this exhibition. SAG-AFTRA is committed to ensuring residual payments both reflect the economic value of our members' contribution and serve as a meaningful source of performer earnings. So what I read into this paragraph, and for those that have been following me for a few years now, know my stance with regards to how to solve the streaming problem, which is to adopt a network model, meaning that instead of the advantage on streaming having no commercial ads and no commercial act breaks, that I think it's best. As inconvenient as it can be to audiences, and I completely understand that 100%, the benefit of the commercial ad placements and selling commercials between act breaks means that the studio's goal is to sell those ads for the most money they can get. And the only way they can do that is if the show is a hit. And if for the show to be a hit, it has to be good. And that is how you get your reinforced meritocracy within your production. It's how, let's put it this way. I think a number of the Disney Marvel shows would have been canceled after 3 or 4 episodes if they used the network model. because people would just be tuning out constantly. They're too much padded out. They don't have a good inciting incident. Character development on it is slow crawl. It doesn't work in that model. However, another show that was on Disney Plus that could have benefited from that, oddly enough, was Turner and Hooch. I mean, it felt like it was made 10, 15 years ago, but it had compelling characters. It was a beautiful story about a man and his best friend that happened to be a dog that kind of drove him nuts, but was also, enriching his life. You had a mystery. It did not disgrace any of the characters from the film that were referenced and used, and it was very charming. And the other part too is it also circumvented some of the woke mandates that have been put into other shows as well, in a very believable fashion. And there's great character relationships, and it was charming. And I think it would have done well. But again, it's really hard to compete in that nature when you're on a streaming platform that one, it didn't promote that show at all, really, and instead it leaned into the more recognizable IPs. And there's the other part of the problem, again, with marketing, again, with the studios. They go for the low-hanging fruit. I can't recall the last time I saw the mentality from a studio exec or a marketing department that said, challenge accepted. I'm going to make the whole world fall in love with this brand new idea. That's how much I love it. I've yet to see that in a very, very, very long time. And I wish we got more of that. I mean, how awesome would it be? And you know what? I last night I was out with Mr. Paul Chato. We saw The Sound of Freedom, and here's a great example of that. The Sound of Freedom, movie made about 5 years ago, finally gets a release. It's doing incredibly well for its budget at the box office. I found it to be a very entertaining film. And he will be dropping our review of that later, so keep an eye out for it. And it's getting better reviews and better returns based on its budget than the studio tentpole of Indiana Jones, which is crazy, like absolutely crazy. I think this movie should definitely be seen, shared with people. It's a basic, entertaining film. I recommend it to those that want to see a very compelling story. And it's both what you expect and a little not what you expect. But the same thing is, like, I should be able to say the same things about a story like Indiana Jones as well. And I can't, because the stuff isn't there. And I think it would be great if we had more people, because again, this movie was financed by Fox, and then was sold in the acquisition, and then Angel Studios purchased the rights for distribution and to get it out there, so they own the film now. But this was a studio film, and I think it would have been fantastic had Disney not purchased Fox. Had Fox released this movie at the time, I don't think it would have had as much attention as it gets now. But I still think it would have been interesting for Fox to say, yeah, we spent $14 million and we pulled in 45 in the first week. That's a win. And look at, the guys across the street spending $250 million, $300 million and pulling in nothing that allows them to cross over their expense threshold. I think we need that stuff. I like the idea of studios, executives, marketers taking whether it's a story based off true events, whether it's an original IP, and just saying, you know what? Yeah, let's do a David and Goliath thing. Let's try and actually, show the world that this is a very good story and it's got great talent, great acting, and show the world that you don't always have to rely on, or not rely. I misspoke. Show the world that new intellectual properties can still be made and survive and thrive without having to break down, deconstruct, circumvent the existing ones. Because remember, Star Wars didn't exist until 1977. But now it's a part of our culture. Things like that have to continue. You have to have new original IPs. You cannot just be holding on to the things that were successful and perverting the nostalgia of that. There has to be an injection of new stuff. And the crazy thing about Hollywood is that there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of overconfidence, but they're misplaced in both regards. There's fear of trying something new, and then there's the overconfidence of that which has already been successful. And really, I think that needs to be flipped. I think there needs to be overconfidence in something new, and a fear of that which has been successful, because you want to be saying, like, I don't know if we can repeat that again. We got to take a risk. We got to take chances. We got to do something crazy. And now, don't get me wrong. I will definitely say that Indiana Jones was risky and took a chance. I just don't think the quality of the risk and chance they took matched the execution. I think the execution fell very, very far short. And as I mentioned on, what was it, Tuesday I streamed last? There's always a way you can make risky things work. You just have to experiment and get feedback that is not affirmation. So that is something to consider. Holy crap, there's 172 of you in the chat. Thank you so much, guys. This is probably one of the largest audiences I've had on this channel for a live show. So thank you so much on that. I'm going to get to you guys as soon as we finish this article, and then we'll jump into the next one here. Yeah, let's continue on. Okay, so with respect to AI, the Guild has said artificial intelligence has already proven to be a real and immediate threat to the work of our members and can mimic members' voices, likenesses, and performances. We must get agreement around acceptable uses, bargain for protections against misuse, and ensure consent and fair compensation for the use of your work to train AI systems and create new performances. In their public statements and policy work, the companies have not shown a desire to take our members' basic rights to our own voices and likenesses seriously. I find this to be very important because it comes back into how much do you value yourself and your individuality. I think that's very important. I think that should be protected. I think that's part of the sovereign nature of who we are as a species, our own individual sovereignty. And I would hate the idea of a great actor having their performances uploaded to an AI for recreation, and then they take, say, another actor and their performances, and they try to, crisscross them, so to speak. And now we've got Ben Kingsley acting like Jim Carrey, or the reverse. I just don't think it would be work. I don't think it'd be authentic. And here's the other part too: you lose. So there's this term in Hollywood called a random act of brilliance. And it's when a good idea just pops into your head. You can't figure out how it came to be or whatever. It just is there. You do it, and everybody is like completely on board with it. And this can sometimes happen with actors and definitely with writers. And it also allows a uniqueness to the actor. Like, you can look at all of Meryl Streep's performances, and there's always something different about each single one. And because of that pattern, I don't think an AI could accurately predict what Meryl Streep would do in a brand new role. Only Meryl Streep has to figure that out first before she does it. And I think that is the angle that actors have over artificial intelligence. And I think there's too many people in the studio system that don't understand or appreciate that. And I think that's a tragedy. And I also think that the tech companies don't understand or appreciate that. They live in computers so much that maybe they have lost an understanding of what humanity really is. All right, so here we go. Looks like we're getting to the end here. With regards to self-taped auditions, meanwhile, are unregulated and out of control, the Guild said. Too many pages, too little time, and unreasonable requirements have made self-taping auditions a massive, daily, uncompensated burden on the lives of performers. Reasonable rules and limitations in access to other casting formats are sorely needed to ensure fair access to work opportunities and protect performers against exploitation. The Guild also said that many other important issues, including those specific to particular careers and categories, will be on the table as well. So, for those of you unaware, self-tape is basically kind of like a live stream thing here, or an edited video on YouTube. Actor goes up, they read their lines, they do a bunch of variations of the performance. They pick the best one that they think will help them get the role, and they send it out. But comparing that to a normal audition process, an actor comes in, they do their first read. If the director is competent, they will give them direction. Not because the performance is bad or anything of that nature. They're doing this to figure out if this actor speaks director. And that's a very important thing. You cannot do that with a self-tape. If an actor comes in and says, you know what, I really like that performance, but I want you to do it again. But this time I want you to do it as though you are outside in a freezing environment and you're trying to stay warm and you're trying to let on that you're not cold. And, the actor takes a moment, figures it out, okay, resets, and then does it. And based on that outcome, that informs the director if this is an actor that they can work with. And it also informs them of their talent and their ability to think and process and alter their performance in a very short amount of time. And you can't do that with a self-tape. And I think that's why it's really important for auditions to be in person and in that area. And I also think it's really important that after that process, you get your group auditions. This is where you mix and match various actors in different roles to try and get a feel of what sort of behavior you're doing. So they're called chemistry tests. At least the last time I remember, they were called chemistry tests. Again, because of the pandemic, I haven't been in town in 3.5 years, going on 4, unfortunately. Excuse me. So, yes, based on this article, based on the reports that I've heard myself, I'm very saddened that SAG has to go on strike and join the writers. But if they are to be believed, and I think it's fair to give them the benefit of the doubt, I don't disagree with their grievances. So I'm going to check out what you guys are saying in the chat. So thank you so much for your patience for the last 50 odd minutes of me just talking on my own. But I wanted to get through those basic parts first because I think it's kind of important to get a little bit more context on the situation. I don't think it's as easy as we would like it to be. So first up, we got, oh, look, there it is. There she is. Nerd Cookies. Hello, Elaine. Thank you for being here. Says, hit that like button. Yeah, sure. If you enjoy the stream, hit the like. Absolutely fantastic on that. Yeah, I don't know how. I'm not very good at self-advertising. If you give me a movie project or a story, I can advertise the heck out of that. I don't look at myself that way. Maybe I should. Maybe that'll give me some better career opportunities once these strikes are over. We'll see. I'll give it a shot. Let's see here. We've got a thumbs up super sticker for $1.99. Thank you from G-Dog. Thank you so much for that thumbs up. Greatly appreciated. I'm glad you're enjoying this. I see we also have a Daga in the chat. Good afternoon, Daga. Happy to have you here. We also have Douglas, 1985, VA loves horror. Says, yeah, look at Walking Dead at its height. There would be commercials every 2 minutes. I remember that. Yes, on AMC, they really, really liked. Oops, hold on. Don't want to get to that just yet, but thank you. Yeah, they really liked doing that because, again, it was a very popular show and they made a lot of money on commercials. So bear with me. I'm just scanning through the chat, picking up some stuff that, because I'd love to get to each and every one of you. I just don't have all of that time, but I definitely want to address some of your questions and comments. Okay. If I had disposable income, I would totally hire a producer to help me with this, but I don't. So let's see here. Just scrolling through. Bear with me, guys. Much respect to all of you for hanging in with me here. Okay. All right. These all seem pretty good. So let's see what I can do. All right. Oh, let's go in some order here. All right, so we got Davina Duckworth. Hello, Davina. Says, I'm sure the studios are going to reserve the right to use AI voice and likeness usage. I am sure they're going to fight for that a lot. Excuse me. One of the reasons being is that we might return to the model where there's a movie star again, and digitally resurrect your favorite actors and talent. They did a little testing of that in the Flash movie, which I thought was poor, not just in their final product execution, but also in their concept. You go on to say, Davina, it's hardball. The SAG needs to negotiate an acceptable rate for likeness at the outset. I think they have to figure out a way to find a good balance of it. Like, for instance, if they're saying an artificial likeness, but the actor still does the performance, meaning that they're still on set, they're doing whatever they need to, voicing what have you, and then maybe there's a digital mask of a younger version of themselves or one with makeup or what have you. I think that is reasonable. It's the 100% replacement that I would have an issue with. Like, for instance, it would be horrible to see more like a stuntman, doing a whole bunch of stunts, and then they just slap over Harrison Ford's younger self on it, because I think we as a species are going to recognize that's not Harrison Ford, because everybody has their own specific forms of movement. Harrison very much so with his acting. And at the other type, what happens when now it shifts over to, okay, we got the stunt people doing it, we're doing a digital mask overlaying them with another actor. Now computer animation and movement and balance and physics has gotten so advanced we don't even need the stunt guy anymore. So now there's no human element into it, and we are just getting very hyper realized cartoons. And so we end up losing something of that in that, I wouldn't call it an evolution, but in that change, as it were. We got Introspect. The Introspect M says, there seems to be this overhanging assumption from the guild that studios are just raking it in. But is that really the case? Seems like most shows might actually be failing to be profitable. Well, it's a mix of both, actually. So the issue at hand with regards to the actors is when the trades are reporting that the high level studio heads are taking in bonuses in the tens of millions of dollars. And the question you have to ask is, well, where is that tens of millions of dollars coming from? Right. And I think that's fair. And I wish I had a full answer for you on that. SAG and the WGA highly suspect that has to do with the residual models, and that how they're not being fully transparent with those models. And if they are able to give themselves or reward themselves these compensations, the money has to come from somewhere. And wherever that money comes, the question is it really unfair that, not all of it, mind you, just enough of it to cover the basics that these unions are asking for? Is it unfair for some of that to go there? And I would say it would only be unfair if the produced projects that they have were not reflective of the quality to the studio. And again, it's the studio's job to make sure that quality is there. So if the studios are fine with it and they don't say anything, then you are reasonable to assume the quality is there. Therefore, if they're giving themselves tens of millions of dollars of bonuses, but you're still, working on a minimum on a 6-episode series, and you're not getting any work in between because all shows are 6 to 8 episodes, and the gigs are few and far between, what have you. So you're struggling to cover your expenses for the time you're off work, and the seasons gaps in between are so great that even if you do have an opportunity to take a job, what are the chances that there might be an overlapping of writers' rooms where you start a writer's room in, say, August that has a schedule to end mid-September, but your previous show's writer's room starts the 1st of September. So then you have that 2 weeks where you're working at 2 different things, and you can't always do that. And scheduling can be a nightmare in that regard. So it's very, it's unfortunately complex. I mean, it's not always going to be in that hypothetical that I just stated, but it raises a question, which is that, okay, if they're saying my show is not making any money, why is the head of the studio taking, $26 million bonus and extending their contract for 6 more years or 3 more years, what have you. I mean, I think that's a fair question, right? And here's the other part too. If my show is not making any money yet, it's been renewed for a second season. Why can't I renegotiate my contract for more pay? And if they say there's no money, and then they say, well, and then they take home that $26 million bonus, it's like, well, I see $26 million, which is a bonus, which is not part of your initial salary, which is already pretty high and pretty great. But you've got that extra $26 million. Well, that $26 million could probably pay for another episode or pay to cover, cover certain special effects and locations and maybe additional cast that can help improve the quality of the show. So it comes down to, well, how are they spending money? Where are they spending money? Versus how much are they really taking in and how much are they saying they're losing? Hey, we got X-Ray Girl, my fellow Canadian, in the chat. Good to have you here. Thanks so much for swinging by. Fanto5692 asks, I wonder how difficult it is to script for a movie based on true events. Is it a tightrope between realism and entertaining? It depends on the type of adaptation you're doing. So a movie like The Sound of Freedom takes place over a very contained time period. And I think that helps it out a lot because it's focused on one specific goal. Now, conversely, with biopics, those usually take place over the course of almost the entire life of a person. I'm not a big fan of that approach because you get time jumps, you get sporadic milestone moments peppered throughout the story, when really a good biopic should just be focused on the most significant life-changing event that made them who they are. The Sound of Freedom does that. It is apparently, I suspect, Oppenheimer does that, but then again, it's Christopher Nolan, so you don't know exactly what to expect, other than maybe some front-loaded exposition. Excuse me. But I would say if you are a writer out there and you want to do something of a biopic, I would focus it around the immediate events, the immediate time around the major event of their lives. Be it something very conflicting, like for instance, if you're going to do something of Martin Luther King, I would center the movie around the time of his famous speech, because that is what he's well known for. And there's probably a very interesting story about him writing that speech, the motivations behind that speech, what he wanted to do. And I think you could get a lot of valuable information about that character around it. And I'm pretty sure there's been a number of TV movies and feature films that have done that already. They're escaping me at the moment, but that's something to consider. And that's usually the advice I give to writers. Heck, if I was going to do a biopic of sorts, that would be my approach. I'd find someone who I found very interesting and find that the most relevant point of their life, if they're still alive, I'd reach out to them and get that information and ask them a slew of questions about what was going on in their heads, what was going on around those times. And then I would try and find from those recollections from the subject, the narrative. And then I would piece it together as authentically as I could while still keeping it entertaining and engaging for the people to read and watch it. We have Fractal Brain. Oh, I see what you did there. I like that. The 1-3 rain. Love that. Says, Script Doctor, are both groups thinking about how scripted media is way more a worldwide phenomenon? It could further damage their places in people's minds that will turn to other countries' medias. That's a very good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that, but that's something to explore for sure, Fractal. I mean, for decades, every country has had their own media complex, of varying sizes, of course. With the infrastructure of the internet, you are able to get more content a lot easier and access to it. With streaming as well, a lot of streamers are branching out and purchasing completed content to distribute on their own streaming stuff. Disney announced recently, for the very first time that I can at least think of, because again, Disney likes to produce a lot of stuff in-house and they like to control it 100% on their own. But Disney has been licensing out foreign media to put, to my understanding, on Disney Plus. So I think that's quite fascinating. And but I will say this. I mean, yeah, the world is getting smaller in some regards. As more companies are selling products internationally to each other, they're going to come into their own set of conflict. With regards to this, I mean, gosh, that's a really good question. That's something I'll have to ponder on a little bit more. I don't know how much it will actually damage them, because I'm not seeing, aside from a couple of aspects on the WGA side of things, so far for the actors side of things, I'm not seeing anything that seems obtuse, arrogant, or unreasonable with regards to their requests for renegotiating. Now, I could be wrong in that area, and if anyone can point out some stuff for me that I might be missing, please do so, because I want to be as informed as I can on this, for myself and for you. But I haven't seen anything that feels that if other people were to put themselves in the shoes of the actors and what they're asking for, they wouldn't be on their side. Possibly within certain reasons, but for the most part on their side. So I don't think it will technically damage their reputation. This really, in the court of public opinion, is kind of damaging the studio's reputation a little bit. Because given the amounts of profits that they've had over the last decade with their film and television and their experiments with streaming, which I think streaming is better than what we think it is, but it still has some difficulties to overcome. And yeah, it's been a huge investment for these studios. And I think it is going to go the way of just being an on-demand network. Excuse me. And I have, I really do feel that eventually, after the streaming wars kind of settle down, and we have our default reliant streaming digital networks, as it were, there might be a companion to that, which would match the television affiliates from, the 60s, 70s, and even till today, where there'll be some sort of streaming affiliate that will pick a number of shows across all the streaming services that you, the audience, can go to, subscribe to in one payment, one bill, and see all your favorite shows or see all the most popular shows through them. And that affiliate licensed those shows from Disney Plus, Amazon, Apple, Max, what have you. I think that might be the case. Even Netflix. I think that might be the case one day. And again, one of the things I really love about streaming is that it's very on demand. It's at your convenience. It comes with the added benefit that the studios don't have to compete for a time slot. You don't have to compete for the 8 p.m. Thursday night time slot with your streaming show at all. And the other part too is that you have a far more flexible window for popularity. Say you're doing a streaming show. Let's say Max does Peacemaker 2, because I enjoyed Peacemaker 1. And they drop it the same weekend that we get Mandalorian Season 4. Now, let's exclude taste at this point here. Let's just assume that an audience of 3 million will watch Mandalorian and a potential audience of 3 million will watch Peacemaker. Let's just throw those numbers around for now. And they both drop on the same day. And they're using the ad-based model, which means commercial ads and whatnot. Well, let's say people watch the Star Wars stuff first. So that means that Disney can report their ratings for that first episode drop, sell the commercial ads for the remaining episodes, and make some money off of that, assuming that's good, of course. And for Peacemaker, they have their same deal. Again, they have their same audience. It's not for the same window, which means that a person can watch episode 1 of Mandalorian and then go to Peacemaker, or vice versa. And both studios could sell commercial ads based on their known rating numbers of, say, 3 million people per episode. And they both still make money, and they don't have to compete for that drop time slot. And then the other part too is that whatever show ends up having the legs and maintains rewatchability, they're able to continually sell commercial ads between those act breaks for the entirety run until those numbers start to decline. And the odds are, if the show is good, the numbers are not going to decline too much because people like to go back and watch things that they like. And so you're not competing for that 1 hour block time slot on a Thursday night, so to speak. So the only people that might end up actually suffer a little bit are the businesses that pay for commercial ads, because they'll have to pay top dollar for a number of shows as opposed to just top dollar for one show to get eyes on their product. But that also allows for, as I mentioned earlier, better meritocracy. If a show is good and can gain a whole bunch of viewers onto it, the studios can sell the ads for the highest dollar, and that will not only pay for the show, hopefully some of what's left over pays for residuals and pays for infrastructure, bandwidth, maintenance, all those types of things. And the more good shows they have, the more money they rake in. And just like how Network was, where the hit shows made a lot of money. They had massive ratings, like between 7 and 12 million viewers on average on the low end average of it. Sorry, I misspoke again. So that's something to think about. So thank you, Fractal, for that question and my little monologuing there. We have JFJ says, afraid this will end up like publishing industry where mid-list authors are going extinct. Risk rewards get skewed, so will just not be worth doing a lot of projects. Maybe entirely possible. One thing I've noticed is that, at least with regards to the trades, advertising of some self-published or original works has decreased substantially over the last decade. And I think it's really now predicated on social media following. If you know of a good writer, you follow them on social media, they announce their latest book, and you just have to, you share it out, you read it, you buy it, you support it. I mean, you've got the independent comic book sphere, the Iron Age, as it were, primarily advertised through social media, doing exceptionally well for a lot of their books, which I'm a huge supporter of. I'm actually encouraging them all. I like more writers, more stories, more people getting into the creative sphere. I think that's a great thing. So I'm all for it. Hopefully that can be some way to circumvent it. And hopefully we can also get the same thing for traditional style of novels, be it novels, novellas, pocketbooks, pulp, the whole thing. I'm down for it. More people with more stories is that they want to share with the world, I think is always a good thing. It doesn't matter like if it's my taste or not. There's always going to be some audience out there that could like your work, especially with the access of that social media brings. And I see no problem with just trying to put it out there at all. Clone Geek says, I think D+ missed the mark with content. It should have been revolved around reviving older IP and introducing new audiences to these lesser known films. Well, it kind of does that. I just don't think they put any. I think to your point, Clone Geek, they don't put enough advertisement showcasing some of the classics that made Disney, right? And again, they do have a number of them, but one of the aspects that the terrible truths of Hollywood is that if Walt and Ron didn't do their Magic Kingdom parks in California and Florida, Disney would have not survived to this point. They would have vanished by this mid-70s. They had some remarkable films. They were few and far between, unfortunately. They were always considered one of the lowest tier studios from the dawn of the studio system. What we've seen over the last decade has been the highest Disney has ever been in its existence. And the fact that they can't sustain it shows how the initial infrastructure, regardless of Walt and Ron, and I appreciate those two men for what they did and put together. The infrastructure of that studio, how it was run, the direction that they were heading has never been a truly successful one. They have been very successful with the parks. They have been very successful with merchandising. They knew how to market to little girls and families. And I would argue in some cases they don't always promote family values. I mean, where's Aladdin's parents? Where's Little Mermaid's mom? Where's Andy's dad? I mean, again, they get to the core of human beings and positive relationships. The family values things I think is hit and miss here and there for Disney, but again, that's my interpretation of it. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to get some great counterpoints on that. I did not grow up with Disney films in my household. The only time I'd ever see a Disney movie would be at school if my teacher was sick and we had a substitute, and we'd see something like Mary Poppins or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Yeah, I didn't see Little Mermaid till college when we had to study adaptations and cartoons. And Disney was one of the models there, so that's the first time I actually started to see Disney films. Aside from some of the live action family ones here and there. So yeah, I didn't grow up with that as a part of my life. Not many people in my family did. And it had nothing to do with Disney or who the man was. Well, it was just my parents, my family in general. They liked more interesting films. I was a toddler just out of diapers when I saw North by Northwest and Psycho and a lot of Hitchcock films and a lot of old classic, Gumshoe detective films, Double Indemnity and The Third Man and the Cape Fear and all those things. Like that's the stuff I grew up with. So that's just me. But again, if you can cite me some great classic Disney films that promote traditional family values and point them out to me, I'm down for giving a look, watching it over, hearing you out. Please do. Absolutely. I'm all for that. I like expanding my palettes for sure. We have Cavatino Calvary Manche. Sorry for the accent there, but it was the only way I could get my tongue to cooperate. It says, with my temper, not sure how I would feel after watching Sound of Freedom in a theater because of my skill set and unfortunate state of my mental health to help liberate children of people being exploited. It's not an action movie. It's a very heartwarming drama, and its theme is hope and determination and never giving up and ingenuity. And I if you think it might be something where you might cause a ruckus in the theater, then I'd probably wait for it for streaming. But I still think give it a shot. We have Fractal Brain says, Script Doctor, are both groups thinking about how scripted media's is way more a worldwide phenomenon, can be further damaged. Oh wait, you're right. We already did this one, so I guess you repeated it. Well, thank you, scripted media. You have that. Okay. We then have Doug, 1985. VA loves horrors for $9.99. Thank you. It says, can actors and writers just become social media influencers and capitalize on their fan base for the time being? Basically, stream every day like Mead or Nerdotic. Well, a number of talent have done podcasts for themselves. Bill Maher does podcast for him that doesn't violate his stuff as far as I can tell. So let's see what else we got going here. I'm catching up with the chat, jumping between live and starred and tabs here. Okay, let's see what's going on. Again, I appreciate all 170 plus of you here listening to me go on. I'll go look at a couple more comments, and then we're going to do the next quick little article. I see Valiant Renegade and Tom from Midnight's Edge are here, as well as Darren M. and Magic Tech Mags. Thanks you so much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. And I really appreciate you listening to me on this impromptu live. Excuse me. I see we have Mihan here. Says, Script Doctor, what did you think of the miniseries The Offer? I loved it. Me too. In fact, me and Tom at Midnight's Edge, we did a stream of this on your channel about The Offer, didn't we? feel like we did. We definitely talked about it a lot. I highly recommend it. This one does do a little bit more embellishing of the facts at hand, but still very enjoyable. The actor who played Bob Evans was phenomenal. I want to see him do that role a few more times with some other movies, especially Rosemary's Baby. I think that would be brilliant. But yeah, I dug it. If you have not seen The Offer, it's on Paramount Plus. Go check it out. Highly recommend. Very enjoyable. Great insights into certain behaviors of the filmmaking world as well. Not all of them, but you get some good ones. Let's see what else we have here. The Introspect M says, I'm assuming voice actors have a separate guild. With more foreign media coming into play, dubbing seems like it would have a fast-growing demand, market. There are some different guilds for voice acting for cartoons, but a lot of them do overlap with SAG-AFTRA. And again, if some of the cartoons are being done by the struck studios, they're not going to be able to work. A great person to ask a question on that to get details of it is someone who I'm a fan of, more of his acting as opposed to his voice acting. And I don't mean to slight his voice acting. I think it's absolutely phenomenal, but I don't know as much of his work on the voice acting side of things. And that is Vic Mignogna. Very appreciative man, humble, fun. Reach out to him, ask him his thoughts on the strike and how it affects him and his stuff on the guilds, because unfortunately I don't work too much in animation at all, other than the fact that I've tried to pitch a couple of cartoon shows here and there. So I don't know all the details of that, but I do know that a lot of voice actors also are in SAG as well. And there's a number of cartoons and things being produced by the studios that are now not going to be produced because they are shut down. Heck, Lucasfilm right now, I know they've got cartoons and other live action things in the midst of works. They are now on hold completely because the actors can't perform, even on the cartoon side of things. I know that. Felicity Poubelle. Hello, Felicity. Love your avatar. Says, Script Doctor, are we going to get an influx of actors, actresses to YouTube and or other platforms to build up their fan base? Sorry if this has been addressed already. Came in late. No problem. No worries. Happy to answer this. Here's the thing that's kind of very funny. 6 years ago, kind of in like peak YouTube stuff, a lot of agents were telling their talent to start YouTube channels as an extra means of advertising. And then I think it kind of shifted over to Instagram soon after. But I do remember that. I remember actors and even some writers were starting YouTube channels to talk about their experiences in the industry and their advice and encouragement for those that want to break in. I remember that being a thing. I don't know how much of that has survived. Again, YouTube is massive, and the other part too is YouTube itself manipulates what it shows you based on a couple of your clicks. And for me, I try to search for all sorts of crazy stuff just to skew the algorithm's means to manipulate me. So, like I watch some people tell stories through video games. I watch a lot of how-to stuff on old cars, which I still can't fully grasp on the mechanics side of things. I look at like painting and art channels and stuff that's completely outside of my normal purview, just so that whenever I click on my home and recommendations, I don't get the things that I'm already subscribed to. So that's my thing. But yeah, you know what? I would not be surprised if we get a couple more actors doing more Instagram or YouTube or social media stuff to try and supplement their income. I don't begrudge them for that. I think anything that you can do to keep you afloat so that you can stay in this industry, if it is truly something you love, is fine, so long as you're not compromising your moral values or exploiting other people in any way or fashion. Lily von Strupp says, Disney hire a lot of UK talent that no one has heard of because they're cheaper than American options. They've always done that. And here's the other part too. Again, The studios are guild signatories, and that means that if you are not a guild member but are hired by them, you become a guild member. So let's say hypothetically I was a British actor and I'm hired by Disney to be in another Star Wars show. Well, guess what? As soon as I'm hired by Disney, I am part of SAG-AFTRA. I get my SAG card. And if they're on strike, guess what? That's the first thing I have to do to fulfill my obligation to the union that I have now been joined with through this hiring. There's no escape from that. Sadly, that's just how it is. Now there are certain things where some actors have not used their name on projects, like independent projects, during a strike, and they usually get permission from their guild captains on that. So I believe Jason Lee did an independent film in the 90s when there was a short actress SAG strike, and he was credited as someone else, but it was clearly him. And that was what was negotiated at the time, and he's still acting, doing his stuff. We have Zavian, says, I wrote a novel, tried looking for a publishing agent on Writer's Digest and could only find 4 out of hundreds who did not mention wanting LGBT voices. Yeah, that's pretty sad. It's not great. I think I think you're narrowing your potential. I mean, in truth, the opposite should be the case. It should be we're looking for anyone, and we don't care if they are LGBT or not. Just anyone. Just open up widest net you have. Better chances of finding great stories. I don't like the idea of narrowing in your net, so to speak. Davina Duckworth says a huge number of TV shows and films are based on books. Yes, in fact, in 2009, after the writer's strike, my new agent at the time kept on encouraging me to take some of my original scripts and turn them into comic books. And at that period, that was incredibly expensive. Talking minimum $100,000. And it's like, I'm a starting out writer. I have never seen $100,000 before, let alone have that to spend on a book to give it as an IP. Doesn't even matter if it sells or not. It's the fact that it's a published IP. Studios will be willing to buy up the rights and then hire you or someone else to adapt it into a property for live action or cartoons or what have you. That is a problem, but it's something that occurs, and it's been occurring for generations at this point. Anytime a new book is debuted, studios will quickly jump out, send someone to read it really quick, get their assessment coverage, and then if they feel it hits their brand, option the rights. The Godfather went through that exact same thing. Godfather book came out, was making some buzz. They before the buzz actually hit, the studios already had someone out there reading it, made a call, got the film rights for it. And then as it picked up, that's when they started, considering putting it into production for release. That is just one example. And you can actually see some more details of that example if you watch The Offer, which has already been discussed at this point. I see we got Valiant Renegade, the wonderful internet celebrity of the numbers, along with the WDW Pro, says, and even when the movies become hyper successful for 10 to 15 years, the parks and resorts were still the biggest drivers of the revenue. That is correct. In the last decade, with regards to Disney, even though they made billions of dollars, or at least on gross, for their Marvel properties, they were still raking in way more money with the parks. And it's been like that model for a long, long time. Like Disney was very, very pleased up till around 2016 to 2018 with how much they dominated the box office. Because one, it was the first time they ever did. And two, it was essentially commercials for their parks. And they had never been to that level before. Warner Brothers has been there. Paramount has been there. Sony Columbia has been there. MGM. Actually, I don't know if MGM has been there. But United Artists had some hits that really made the rest of the industry double take on them. Disney Not so much. I mean, listen, you have animated hits for kids. That's one thing, but that's a very narrow demographic. That is your 4 to 16 demographic. And really what you want is you want that 18 to 45 because number one, they have money. And number two, they go to more stuff. More stuff is marketed to them. So it's a harder competition to it's a harder field to compete in. And if you can nail that 18 to 45 market, yeah, you're considered a powerhouse. And, the other studios could do that. Not so much Disney. Disney was very niche and it worked for them for a long time. Even in the Eisner era, they knew how to sell. And again, one of the principal reasons that always bugged Disney is they could never corner the boys market the way they could the girls. And that's why they purchased Power Rangers. And a whole bunch of other stuff from Fox Kids and whatnot. But they don't know how, they didn't bring in anyone that knew how to sell those things to the market that made them popular enough to buy. They kind of got rid of them. Tom from Midnight's Edge has a, where were you when Hollywood committed seppuku? What did you do? What did you do when you heard they were blowing themselves to poo? You're going to have to sing that, Tom. I don't have much of a voice there. The Introspect M says a ton of independent comic books have been optioned over the past several years, but most have never gone beyond that. That is true. It is very difficult. Like options get thrown around a lot. Options are not huge numbers. Sometimes they're $1,000 for 6 months, $500 for 3, or $500 for 6 months. Like it's all what you can negotiate, but options are decent, but not great. And the development is always very slow moving. Again, it's, if you have a story that's of another medium and they want an option to make it into a TV series or movie, it for yourself to look at it, if the option is a limited thing, it's considered like free money if you can, to a degree. But yeah, the likelihood that it's going to get made is really not always in your favor, unless you get a big name attached who's just very, very committed. We got Jonas J. Campbell here. Hello, Jonas. Thank you for swinging by, saying, what a party. Yes, indeed. Over 190 of you listening in. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me for this. We're going to go for a little bit more. I'm going to see what else you guys are saying in the chat. Then we're going to do the next one next a little bit. Try and go through a little bit quicker. Excuse me. Storm King says Disney should have waited until they bought Hulu and then rebranded it Disney Plus. They could have been earning all that cash from those in place contracts and infrastructure. I guess, yeah, that is a possibility. Iger's not a very patient man, though, so it is what it is. Now they're basically putting a hard spot where they have to buy out Comcast and figure out what to do with Hulu after that. I think Valiant has some insights on that for you guys. Excuse me. Just trying to catch up with the chat. Yes, Tom of Raminez, the offer is awesome. It is 100% awesome. Darren M says, yes, please check out Script Doctor's Twitter and checked out Script Doctor's Patreon. Yes, so on my Patreon, I've done a original draft review of Mission Impossible, and I am in the process of trimming up a wonderful conversation I had with Robert Meyer Burnett that I'll be dropping there. The goal is to get it there Saturday. And we talked about Mission Impossible and the model that Mission Impossible has used and that some of the current day studios have used with regards to legacy characters and the way that they pass the torch and how it can be mishandled in some regards and in one regard mishandled with regards to respect of the character, but still somehow work based on the execution of the story. So look forward to that. It was a lot of fun to do. I'm going to be doing more of those with other people as well, just based on, number one, the subjects that I have at hand, and of course scheduling. That's the most important part. Mion says they must do The Offer season 2. I would love to see another follow up to The Offer with that production team. Davina Duckworth says it might be a good idea to keep those rejection letters just so you don't resubmit to the same places with the same manuscript. Also, rejection letters can still lead to a dialogue with the editor. Yes. Not just with publishing, but also with studios. I have a nice little folder with all of my rejection emails and whatnot. And I have them just really to maintain the contact information. I have no problem with people rejecting my work. I mean, that's 99% of the job. But you never know. Like sometimes in the commentary of the rejection, and if they give you a why, which is always great, I always trust the people that provide a little bit of a reason for the rejection, as opposed to just the hard no, or we don't think this is a good fit type of stuff. Because maybe I'll write something and I'll go through the rejection letters and I'll see, oh yeah, this person, this is what they like. And you know what? It matches up to the script I wrote. So I will send them that script. I'll send them a query first, and then they'll ask for the script, because that's usually how you should do it. Don't just blindly send them. I know some people have and gotten lucky for that. I don't recommend it personally. It's always better to get a query, because when someone asks and says that they're interested in your pitch, you've now opened up a paper trail to say that yes, they wanted to read this, as opposed to if you send it to them blindly, they can always claim that they never read it. And if they're seedy people, and we're talking about people way outside the normal studio system, they could be desperate enough to, and have the necessary connections to basically abscond with your work. It's pretty rare, but again, it's always better just to get a dialogue, so that if that does happen, you can point to an email saying, look, on this day and this thing, I sent them an email asking for it. They replied back saying, yes, please send me your script. Here's proof of the attachment, blah, blah, blah. And they've got it because they acknowledged you, as opposed to, they can always just say, oh, I deleted it, or I went to my junk mail, I never saw it. There's plausible deniability there. But if they respond to you, no plausible deniability, and you have a better chance of winning that arbitration. Let's see here. Davina Duckworth says there are a few people who can afford to be full-time writers. Absolutely. It's difficult. Sales are few and far between, and there's a lot of us out there. Clone Geek says, didn't George Lucas hate unions? No, he hated studios. He hated studios because they didn't want to experiment or take risk. As far as I know, he didn't really have any significant opinions on the unions until he made Empire Strikes Back, in which case he really hated the Directors Guild, because they kept on finding him for not having the director's name at the beginning of the movie and an opening title credits, because he didn't want to do that for Star Wars. But he paid it, and then he left the union. And as a result, because he was an independent studio, he wasn't necessarily a union signatory. He was able to hire Mark Waid to do Return of the Jedi, even though him and Spielberg had talked for years about him doing what would be Return of the Jedi. And because he left the union and because he went more independent, Spielberg was unable to work on that. Glade Riven is here. He says that Variety article pretty much guaranteed a SAG strike. The one from 2 days ago, yeah, yes, it did. Which is funny, because the one that they released when they got the extension implied, based on the habits of what SAG had done prior, that the extension usually means they just had to get the final talking points or negotiations down, and then they'd have a deal. So it's been a weird 2 weeks in regards to what was being said from both parties with the negotiations. But it's crazy that, we're looking at 63 years since both unions are on strike against the studio system. Okay, just catching up here. Storm King has asked, "Hey, Script, have you been watching the Star Trek Resurgence gameplay?" I have not, no. But if I get some time, I will see if I can check it out. But I appreciate the recommendation. I'm always down for some interesting Star Trek stuff, especially considering how terrible Strange New Worlds is. I mean, I didn't expect it to be good anyways, but not that bad. Tutorial Slave is asking, "Hey, Script, what is your writing process? Are you approaching scripts more intuitively or along the Dan Harmon, John Truby steps of character plot escalation?" I'm a big believer in the outline. Not necessarily following the hero's journey, which is not a bad model to follow when you're just getting started. But sometimes I like to experiment a little bit. But I put the characters first, and I figure out who is my main character, what do they want, why do they want it, what happens when they get what they want, what happens when they don't get what they want. And then I do the same process for the antagonist. And then as I explore the supporting characters, I do the same things. And I go on a cause and effect type of approach when I do my outlining. And that's how I start. And then I refine and refine and refine. And if I find it's getting off the rails, maybe I'll take a look at the hero's journey, or maybe I'll take a look at John Truby's stuff. I have his book on, I believe it has a book on storytelling. I don't have the one on genre. I haven't read the one on genre since college, and it was part of the college text, which I wasn't allowed to take with me. I should have just taken it, but I didn't. And even recently, Robert Meyer Burnett recommended it to me, and I went online looking for it, but it's a little bit out of my price range for the moment. But it's in my Amazon cart for now. In fact, there is one place I could get it affordable, but they don't ship to where I am in Canada, which is a pain in the butt. So so yes, but I'll figure something out with there. But yeah, I'm a big fan of planning. I think the plan is important for two reasons. One, it's kind of like a loose first draft, and two, when you go to draft, you don't have to stick 100% to the plan. Like, there's nothing stopping you from doing. Like, you don't have to be a slave to it. You're doing that to experiment with ideas, and you let the story dictate the direction with which you're going. And if you ever lose track, well, you can go back to your initial outline and be like, okay, well, this is where I lost track. This is where I was going originally with it. And you've got, two attempts to compare and contrast with to try and get you back on track. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a smart way to write. And it also has prevented me from suffering any severe type of writer's block. Sometimes I'll need to take a day or two and just get a palate cleanse and write something else. But yeah, I'm a big fan of outlining. And remember, the outlining is only as valuable as how you treat it. So for any of those that try to say, "Oh, I don't outline," or "I think outlining is stupid," or something like that, it's like, okay, fine. But if you ever do a rewrite, guess what your first draft ends up becoming? An outline. So, take that with you, what you will. Fractal Brain says, "So you are forced into the union?" That is weird. I mean, you can decline technically, but it comes with a lot of complications. The other part too is that for a good while, I mean, a lot of the stories that I've heard from more experienced writers, people who have mentored me, and people I respect, they knew what a real union value was, and by that I mean the fact that the union didn't exist to be the union and collect dues and do nothing. Like, the union was there to make sure that you would get paid for the scalable work with which you create, and they'd coordinate with your talent management to make sure those things were facilitated. Because as the industry got bigger, it was harder for managers and agents to do that on their own, really hard. And the union was formed, and it ended up doing fairly well. The other part too is also allowed for communication and a bit more transparency. people just entering the industry didn't know what the minimum rates were. And a studio who's wanting to save money could exploit someone for that. And if they're a really good, talented writer and they're taking home maybe, at the time, a couple $100 a week, when most other writers were taking, maybe $1,000 a week, and there's no infrastructure around for that new writer to learn that that's not what the standard was. That's what the union was there for, to say, hey, listen, you're coming into this industry. This is the minimum stuff that you can ask for without offending or risk losing a job with your potential employees. Like, the studios wanted you not to know so that they could pay you less. And not to save money for the studios, but really just so that this, some of the people that hired you could just take more. And, whether you think that's good or bad practice, I'll leave that up to you. I'm not going to make a decision on that. But that's one of the things what the union was supposed to do. Now, in some cases, some unions outside of entertainment industry don't do that. Won't get into that aspect there. But in light with regards to this one here, we have a brand new technology that could kill the industry for human beings. And the union is trying to organize everyone to say, no, we will not be replaced by automation for something that shouldn't be automated anyways, which is the concept of creativity. And even if there wasn't a union, one would end up forming as a byproduct of this, because it's basically saying, hey, yes, we, the people that pay your salaries, are going to fire you, hire a piece of software to replace you, and as a result, cripple a section of the society and economy, so that we can just put out general content for the masses to consume without any critical thinking, and raking the money for themselves. In which case, you should be rightfully upset about that. Think of whatever craft you do, that if it's not in entertainment or not in anything else, anything that you do, when your employer says, hey, I'm firing you and I'm replacing you with this robot, how would you feel? That's the question that I pose. Neil, good buddy Neil in the chat says, do you think the strike could possibly change what will be greenlit once it ends? Because there's a talk of superhero fatigue, and I see it more bad movie story fatigue, make the project worth it. Well, okay, so superhero fatigue has been something talked about as early as 2008, even before then. Because again, Batman in the 90s was like the big powerhouse superhero film, but there's a bunch of others that were peppered throughout. Here's one aspect. So we're approaching the 90-day mark for the WGA. A number of contracts, at least in my experience, have a force majeure option that can be pulled at 60 days and at 90 days if the studio chooses to. It's not mandated, but if the studio chooses to, they can pull force majeure and kill a project. With the actors not working, that can become more likely, but again, it's up to the prerogative is with the studios, and it's always with the studios. Again, the studios choose what gets made and what doesn't. The writers don't. The writers are just pitching ideas. Hopefully, something will hit the taste of the studios, and they'll put it together and make it. So if the studios have already had the power. Like, prior to these strikes, there was nothing stopping them from taking a look at the staff at She-Hulk and saying, you know what, you're all terrible, you're fired, we're getting new people in, we're going to try and make this a profitable IP. But they didn't do that. I mean, you can blame the writers for the quality, but again, when you get bad service at a restaurant, do you complain only to the waiter, or do you go to the manager and ask, why did you hire this person? And if they don't give you a good enough response, do not go up to the owner and be like, hey, why'd you hire these people? You got to delve beyond the obvious. So that's a good question. I don't know for sure. It would be nice. I mean, well, you know what? We'll use this to transition to the next part. So thank you for that. So Hollywood studios, WGA strike endgame is to let the writers go broke before resuming talks in the fall. I think this is kind of a little uncouth. Let's just hold on. Just going to do a little thing there. Make it a little bit more in line with that. I think this is a poor ploy because it's kind of redundant. It's actually, it's not just redundant. It's also mean-spirited because, as I said before, the studios could just fire the writers that aren't delivering the stuff that they want. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. That is proper business. That is pure capitalistic, merit-based. Hey, you don't write, the quality we want for our IPs. We're getting rid of you. That's fair. Heck, I have been in a situation where I thought I wrote something that was great. Studio said, you know what, man, we don't like it. And I think we should go separate ways. And you're like disappointed, but that is what it is. They wanted to go somewhere different way. I didn't do it to the quality with which they expected. That's the name of the game. It's, again, rejection is majority of this town. So I had no hard feelings, and every once in a while, if I bumped into them again, and after a couple of words where they remember me or pretend to at least remember me, I think I could still have a positive interaction with them and maybe get another job. You never know, because a lot of people don't like to say. A lot of people want to say yes. They are comfortable saying no, but they also are worried that no might turn into a success. And it's a really hard thing to try and balance and understand. So this article was from a couple of days ago. And it says, exclusive updated with the AMPT statement. Regardless of whether SAG-AFTRA goes on strike this week, the studios have no intention of sitting down with the Writers Guild for several more months. So, gosh, that's bad form. It says, they go on to say, I think we're in for a long strike. They're going to let it bleed out, said one industry veteran intimate with the point of view of studio CEOs. So here's the thing. Studios need writers. Studios need actors. They are striking because they want to update their minimum basic agreements with the current economic standards. And the studios are saying, you know what? We are trying to negotiate in good faith. WGA is not, so we're not going to negotiate. And now we have this rumored statement saying we're not even going to entertain coming back to the negotiating table until the fall. That speaks volumes with regards to how committed they are within this industry and what it means to. I mean, it's essentially they're saying they're not going to make any product. It's weird. What type of industry decides, hey, we want to still be an industry, but we're also not going to make any product? That's strange. Excuse me. So this article goes on to say, with the scribe strike now finishing its 71st day, and the actors union just 30 hours from a possible labor action of its own, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers are planning to dig in hard this fall before even entertaining the idea of more talks with the WGA, I've learned. Not Halloween precisely, but late October for sure is the intention, says a top-tier producer close to the Carol Lombardi-run AMPTP. While some dismiss this as just cynical talk, studio and stream sources around the town confirm the strategy. They also confirm that the plan to grind down the guild has long been in the works for a labor cycle that all sides agree is a game changer one way or another for Hollywood. 1 second, I gotta sneeze. Oh, sorry about that, guys. That was a sneezing fit. I should have actually just left the mic on. It was kind of funny. Okay, so moving on. It has been agreed to for months, even before the WGA went out. One executive said nobody wanted a strike, but everybody knew this was a make or break. Receiving positive feedback from Wall Street since the WGA went on strike May 2nd, Warner Bros. Discovery, Apple, Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Paramount, and others have become determined to break the WGA, as one studio exec blatantly put it. To do so, the studios and the AMPTP believe that by October, most writers will be running out of money after 5 months on the picket line and no work. The end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses. It's kind of cruel. A studio executive told Deadline, acknowledging the cold as ice approach. Several other sources reiterated the statement. One insider called it a cruel but necessary evil. I don't think it's necessary at all. The studios and streamers next think financially strapped writers would go to WGA leadership and demand they restart talks before what could be a very cold Christmas. Well, this is kind of ironic. They want the WGA to demand to restart talks, which they've already been doing for the past 5 weeks, but the AMPTP is saying no. And now this very article is saying that the AMPTP is refusing to talk until late October. So that's a weird. Okay, let's think about this. What is the logic there? They say, okay, if we refuse to negotiate with the WGA, then their union members are going to demand that the WGA demand that we go back to the table, but we are already refusing to go back to the table. So it's kind of a fruitless demand. Yes, William Goldman was right. Nobody knows anything about Hollywood, even those people that run it. Yellow Flash says, good, they have no talent, send them back to Starbucks. Okay, well, that's the thing. The ones that the studios could have already sent them back to Starbucks. Like, dude, that's how it is. The studios pick the writers for their projects. It's not the other way around. And it's silly. Like, you want to blame the writers, you can. I mean, the bad ones are contributing to it, but who hires them? That's the question. You got to talk to the people that hire them. Just like in a restaurant, as I said a few moments ago, you know, if your wait staff is terrible, yeah, you complain to the wait staff itself, but really you want to go to the people that hired them and be like, why did you hire this person? This is how they treated the customers. This is how they treated me and my family at this while we were trying to have our meal. It's not just the fault of the person; it's also the fault of who screened them to be an employee. And for here, in this case here, if the studio is saying, wow, we've hired all these writers and they delivered us this product and we put it out there and the audience didn't like it, the logical explanation would be, okay, well, I guess we don't work with those writers again. But instead, the studios have doubled down and they've tried to re-employ the same tactics that they requested those writers to do over and over again. The problem, I mean, I know you want to say the problem is the writers, and it's a point to it, but beyond that part, just firing those writers isn't going to necessarily solve the problem if the studios are still saying, hey, we really want you to do a strong female character for our next IP, replacing the male character or debasing the male character or what have you. The writer can say no, but the writer wants work. And if the studio is telling them to do that, the problem isn't now with the writers, it's now with the studio. And even so, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the stream, some great writers can achieve those things with subtlety and nuance and still be entertaining. But if the studio exec who commissioned it doesn't pick up on that in the script because they're probably stupid or they don't understand the concept of nuance or subtlety, they will get rid of that writer and get someone that's a bit more on the nose, because now they are like, yes, I see the things that I wanted in here, clear as day, perfect, let's do that. Audiences, quote unquote, will love it because that's what they think. And then when it fails, they don't reassess or reevaluate, or at least not in the way that would be considered productive. So just put it right that. The other part too is that because the AMPTP is saying that they're not going to negotiate till October, that's getting the ones with talent worried. Because again, residuals are not what they used to be. Expenses have gone up. Inflation has gone up. And some of the best ones that need to work a bit more regularly aren't able to now. And yeah, they have every reason to be worried about that, especially if that's the perspective that they're going with. But thank you for stopping by, Yellow Flash. Love your channel, of course, and your Flashcast stuff. But yeah, I think it's more complicated than just saying let the writers rot in that regard. I do know, I mean, listen, I've interacted with a few of them, and especially now that they're more available. And yeah, the ones that are striking because they're of that bad writing element, they have a very narrow understanding of the craft, and they should be kind of weeded out. But that's something the studio could already do, and the fact that they haven't is a big ass problem. And I apologize for swearing there. So we have the severe method comes out of the Guild's successful battle with the agencies in 2021 over dismantling the lucrative practice of packaging. Wow. It was lucrative for the agents, not so much for the writers. The WGA picked off one agency after another until final holdout WME, William Morris Entertainment, backed down, a tactic seen as a warning sign by many in the studio and streamer C-suites, convincing that giving in, as another insider put it, to the writers will result in every contract cycle from the WGA, IATSE, the Teamsters, and more ending in a strike. The AMPTP is aiming for the bottom line. Publicly, the AMPTP are refuting the so-called October surprise. Of course they are. And you know what? Maybe they're not going to do that. Maybe it is just rumor. They're claiming that those anonymous people are not speaking on behalf of the AMPTP or member companies who are committed to reaching a deal and getting our industry back to work, a spokesperson for the organization says. Since the WGA called the first strike in 15 years in early May, there have been no discussions between the AMPTP and the Guild, despite persistent public Guild offers to meet. Sources close to the AMPTP insist there has been no direct offer from the WGA leadership to resume talks. I already know that's not true. I've read the emails that the WGA has sent out for scheduling renegotiations. So that's that source is inaccurate. Still, as pickets went up and production shut down in the strike's early weeks, studio bosses almost uniformly offered banal praise to the writers, but no public proposals to get them back to work. In the meantime, as network schedules shift to unscripted shows and streamers buy up foreign content, the studios and streamers have been saving money on shuttered productions and cost cutting. On a parallel track and reinforcing the AMPTP's divide and conquer approach, negotiations with the Directors Guild in late May proved a success, with ratification coming last month. Even if the 160,000 members of SAG-AFTRA join the WGA on the picket lines, the studios hopes to get the actors back to the negotiating table in a few weeks. A new SAG-AFTRA deal would not see production restart, but it could allow actors to promote projects already set for release, a move that studios hope would further the WGA going into the latter part of the year. The WGA did not respond to request for comment today from Deadline. If or when they do, we will update this post. So that's what they're going on over there. So I think, if there's anything true with regards to that tactic on the AMPTP side, I think that is definitely going to be bad optics for them. And I also think it's not negotiating in good faith. I hope that's not the case. I really do hope that we learn within the next week that the WGA captains and negotiating team are returning to the table, so that we can get this resolved, hopefully before the end of the month. I really think the sooner the better. So let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Tom saying, lame, scripted didn't sing my song. I don't have a singing voice. Let's see here. Just waiting for the chat to refresh on me here. Oh, okay. Whoa, it just jumped on me. All right. Wow. Okay. Oh, we have a $3.99 pound super sticker from Lily Von Stoop. Thank you so much, Lily. Let's see, what is it here? It is a pear with a big old cup of coffee. Thank you so much for that, Lily. It is much appreciated. Kitty Bear says, Script Doctor, been watching you and Paul and Flora from under a rock for 2 days now. Keep replaying Flora's video over and over. Oh, yeah, that was a fun video the three of us did, breaking down and helping develop a commercial. I highly recommend you check that out. Mihan asks, Script, will you be on WDW Pro Stream tonight? I don't think so. I do have some obligations I'll have to get to. In fact, might end up having to cut this stream in. I think I can go for another 15 minutes and still be okay. But no, I'm not sure there. However, I do think it's going to be a fantastic show. So go check that out if you're not. If any of the mods in the chat, please feel free to put in Pro's channel link there, and we'll do that. Charlie for Canadian 2 says, do you have a preferred voice to text program? No, never used them. So I wish I did have a recommendation for you, but I've never used them at all. So what I usually do if I'm in a hurry and I feel like I can say my idea faster than I can write it, I will just turn on the good old recording app on my phone and blurt it out there, and then I'll transcribe it later. Excuse me. But thank you so much, Charlie, for the 2. Much appreciated. There we go. Jonas J. Campbell. Sorry, I'm so used to saying J. Jonah Jameson, but Jonas J. Campbell. Script, have you ever read Stephen Pressfield's books? I absolutely love War of Art. Well, War of Art sounds very familiar. I'll have to check. Let me just look at my office library here. Don't think. Luckily, I have these in alphabetical order, so I'm just going, no. Okay, so I don't have that on my shelf here. I might have it in storage. I have a lot of books. Too many. In fact, I just purchased a few books that I really shouldn't have that arrived earlier this week. And yeah, my girlfriend was a little irate on that. Not that I bought the books, just that I leave them around the house sometimes. So when she comes over to visit, she either sees a new book, or if sometimes when I need to like kind of straighten out my back, I'll lie on the floor and read, and then I'll leave the book on the floor. But my floors are clean, so it's not a big deal. And then sometimes she'll like knock the book with her foot and be like, I could have ruined this. And that's a whole personal stuff I won't get into. Neil says, I'm outlining right now, and it's helped me a lot with my own work, especially for redrafting a character Bible and story outline, because what is in your head doesn't make it good. Plans equal clarity. It also reinforces your ability to better articulate your ideas. Get it out there, even if it's messy. But once you're out there, you can then start isolating things and rearranging. And my gosh, George Carlin has an interview about the word processor and how he loves it because it allowed him to reorganize his stand-up. And same thing can be true for your stories when you outline or when you're just going to draft. Excuse me, I'm just trying to catch up here. Irate Specialist says, Fat Steven has moved over to Rumble. YouTube demonetized him. I'm not sure if you heard that yet. I can't believe he was demonetized. He has a great channel. That's terrible to hear. So this must have happened just recently. I hadn't had a chance to actually go on YouTube this morning to check out anything except for maybe Jeff's show and a little bit of Loki's stuff. But then I had other obligations. So I'm going to reach out to him, see how he's doing on that. Because that sucks. Because I liked his show. And if we didn't have a power outage on Saturday, I would have been doing some cool gaming with him. Generation Zero, because we did that. Irate Specialist, they did it live on his stream this morning. Oh, so this is very recent. Well, that's on. Gosh, that's bad. I don't like it when YouTube does that. Okay. Let's see here. We got John Doe says, if a script is mixed human and AI, how do we, as the public, know what parts of a script are under copyright because a human wrote it and what part of the script is ours as public domain? Well, here's the thing that's kind of weird with AI is that the AI language models, when they are writing scripts, are taking existing copywritten material and repurposing it in the new stuff. So it blurs the lines with public domain, and it also blurs the lines with copyright. So it's very, very messy. And I think that's a very valid reason to prohibit AI from taking any sort of part of the creative endeavor. Greg Phillips says, Script Doctor, as an aside, Mr. Porkchop, whom I really like watching, has a new members Conan server, which seems really stable so far, and modded play to level 300. Join us. You know what? If my schedule works out for it, I may. I had so after last week's power outage, my sleep schedule went a little bonkers, but I managed to get it back on course again. But I have to get out and do some more walking because I'm getting older, and I don't want to get fat. So, and the job of screenwriting and guesting on streams and doing streams like this does keep me a little stationary at times. And I got to get back into the movement more so because I want to stay healthy and fit. It's I want to. I have lots of stories to tell, and I want to make sure I have as many years as I can for myself to tell those stories for you all. So, my mornings I usually spend a good hour and a half walking. Then I'll do some writing. Maybe I'll do a stream like this. Then afterwards, I'll try and go for another walk for a half hour, 45 minutes. And then do some sweeping, dusting, laundry, chores. Just got to keep moving because when you're at a desk, even if you're standing at it, doesn't always help your health. We have Paul M with a cool Green Lantern avatar. And brightest day, sir. Thank you. From hearing you on Midnight's Edge, sounds like you are more of a DC guy. What's your favorite Grant Morrison run? Grant Morrison run. Probably Birthright. He did Birthright. I'm pretty sure he did Birthright. Yeah. Let me just quickly Google that. I want to make sure it's there. No, not Birthright. All-Star. All-Star Superman is my favorite of his Grant Morrison stories. Birthright was someone else. Birthright was pretty good. I'm now, Paul. Yes, I am a fan of DC. However, I really like the DC comics from the mid '60s to the late '70s, early '80s. That is my jam. I mean, when Denny O'Neil became like editor in chief, back in the late '80s, early '90s, I did enjoy his Dark Knight series. I really, really like Chuck Dixon's work that he did. In fact, I think one of the stuff that is most underrated is his Birds of Prey run. I think that was absolutely brilliant. It was like superhero and spy and really great relationships between Babs and Dinah. But no, I like the 70s stuff a lot, except for when Denny O'Neil got rid of Wonder Woman's powers. That was a mistake. But aside from that was more my stuff. Not the biggest fan of a lot of the 80s things. Here and there are some good. Grant Morrison is far more current era stuff. So I'm not I don't read a whole lot of the current era things at all. one thing I do like about Grant Morrison is that he's very appreciative of all the continuity, or not the continuity, but all the issues of Batman, and so he likes to weave in all those types of things into his stories here and there. Um, I think it was foolish of him to create Damian Wayne. Number one, Damian's a terrible name. I mean, it's from The Omen. I know, yeah, whatever. But yeah, I'm more like Len Wein. I like some of his stuff. I'm right now. I'm actually kind of rereading the Flash comics because I'm going to be doing a fun Flash conversation with Caffeinated Wolf Andrew over there from he's one of the social media directors over at Ripperverse. And yes, we have different views on the Flash, but we both really like the character. So I'm doing some prep on that for him. So look forward to that, guys. That's going to be a fun one. Daniel Hall asks, Script Doctor, where is the WGA striking? When I was a member of IATSE and Teamsters, we wouldn't cross a picket line. Are the members not striking picket line when the work is being done? Just corp offices? As far as I know, they're outside of not just the corporate offices, but also any of the studio lots. And a few of them I have heard have found on location shooting that they've been doing some picketing from, but I don't think they've nailed all of them. Because again, not a whole lot of stuff in comparison of film and television is shot in California because it's expensive. But I do know that if anything's being shot on the studio lots, those are where all the main lines are being formed. Unfortunately, I am not down there to support them physically. I can only do so remotely at this time. And yeah, we'll see what happens. This is again, hasn't been done for 63 years. So we'll have to see. Carl Anderson says, do you own a standing desk? That might help. Technically I do. And I'm standing right now. But again, standing is decent. In fact, like right now, I'm kind of just leaning a little bit on my desk, so you might hear some creaking. But yeah, I like to do walking and stuff. And then, but if I'm really getting into writing, I tend to sit down just so I can have my arms at 90, like my arms bent at 90 degrees, so I can type more better. The Introspect M says, AI doesn't break copyright because it's not copying. As far as I understand, copyright deals with production, printing, distribution of a finished work, not application and adaptation. Here's the thing. AI doesn't know how to adapt. That's the other part too. Already a couple of issues have been brought to the courts, and it has already been determined that AI does lift directly from existing stuff. And it's not in the same sense. It's almost indistinguishable to how a human being lifts something up, but it's not in the same sense as how we as a species form our words and sentences for ourselves. So yeah, it's a very complex aspect, and most AI stuff has to have a frame of reference before it can begin on anything, which means it takes input and processes it to produce output. And when it comes to writing, in some cases, we can do that with regards to an adaptation, but a lot of writers are developing an idea internally without too much external influence. And that's where it becomes part of this wonderful aspect of our consciousness called imagination. And because AI cannot imagine, it therefore cannot create and can only copy. And so that is the argument being placed, and so far it has been reinforced. Let's see what else I can come up here. Oh, Reed by Nature is here. Hey, Reed, glad to see you. It says, did you get around to talking Fantastic Four with Clobbering Time? No, I'm very excited for that. Got to figure out the schedule for it. He's got a lot of great shows going on over on his channel. Highly recommend you check them out. His Star Trek coverage is fantastic. But I definitely want to on this because we have different perspective. Oh, here's the funny thing. We understand the characters similarly. I personally just think that they're horrible human beings, aside from Ben Grimm. He thinks that they're fine. That's the only thing that we're different. For there. So let's just here we go. We have Call Me Shadow Paul in chat says, but what happens if you write those stories and they weren't worth waiting for? I don't know. I do not know. That's a good question. What happens if I write those stories and they weren't worth waiting for? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. Okay. You stumped me there, Paul. You stumped me there. Let's see here. The Introspect M says, if it takes direct sentences, then it's not true AI. Actual AI processes learn patterns and then does transform them into unique output. Well, that is what the talking point that the people that developed AI says it does. But currently, the facts do not support that at this point in time. But no, I mean, here's the other part too. First of all, it's not actual AI. It will never be actual AI. It is a simulated intelligence. It takes existing forms of human behavior and tries to replicate them. True artificial intelligence would be what is known as the singularity, a byproduct of a mechanical device that happens to be able to create and has desires and needs very personal to itself. For instance, like you can, there's this hypothetical. You take an AI and you take a child, you put them together in a cave and you leave them alone. You come back, say, a decade later. Guess what? The child is probably not going to be there. You probably have traces that they left, they found food, and they went and started to do a life. The AI will not have moved, not have done anything, because it doesn't have to. It has an AI, at least in the way that it's being approached by the tech people, it requires external motivation. There's nothing internally motivational about an AI with the way that they're developing it. Okay. John Doe says it would be better described as a natural language model that outputs text comprehensible by humans. You know what? That's what it closely is right now. I liken it to basically the ancestor for the Star Trek LCARs, the library, computer, and recall system. That's what it is. You can ask it questions. It's not always going to get the answers right, but it's yeah, it's basically that's what it is. When you try to tell it to write something, it's really bad all the time. Computers are by and large full of lots of information, but memorizing information is not the same as intelligence. Computers are pretty much, oh, yep, here we go. Lily Von Stoop says, to quote Lex Friedman, they're really dumb. Yes, they're really dumb. Phantos, yeah, thank you. Library computer access and retrieval system. Thank you so much. 200-watt studio for 5 says, please explain how the studios will make writers starve if the writers can still get other non-writing jobs if there are no writing jobs. Well, the economy is not doing so well. If there's any writers out there that can get other jobs, I am all for that. But again, the other part too is as part of the union, they also do have to schedule time to go on the picket line. And usually, again, if they do have part-time jobs or other sources of income, they all are very flexible with working around that. So that's the other part too. There's also other people that are writers that sadly I know don't have any other skill sets outside of writing. And there's some of them that are of a certain age where companies won't hire people their age. It's just the way it is. You also have some companies that want private information regarding their medical status that a number of writers are not willing to give up for that. So yes, if that rumor that Deadline reported on has some substance to it, and the AMPTP is refusing to return to the negotiating table until fall, that is bad form, and it will definitely cause a lot of issues, of course. But I would say if that happens, I won't be surprised, but I still think it's highly unlikely that will be the case in reality. But thank you so much for the 200-watt studio. All right. You know what? Wow, we've been going for 2 hours, 25 minutes, and I do, yes, have to get going quite soon. So I want to thank all of you, over 150 of watching. Thank you so much. You didn't have to, but I greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching and listening to me go over those subjects and muse on those reports. Thank you so much for everyone that has sent in donations, from 200-watt studios to Paul M, to Charlie, Lily Von Stupp, Doug 1985, and G-Dog. Thank you so much for your support. Follow me over on Twitter at ScriptDoctorPhD to see when I'll next be going live. If things go well with my next appointment and stuff, I might be able to join Midnight's Edge after dark tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for all your interactions and support. And never forget, when it comes to great stories, it all starts with the script.